It's been a crazy weekend so far here in Indy. The Michelin Pilot Challenge race that we had this afternoon was a wild one with penalties, strategy, and tire dag all playing out in a big way. Now I'll talk about that in the weekend recap, but what I'm here to talk about today is the WeatherTech Championship and what we've seen play out so far this weekend. And with weather potentially playing a big factor in tomorrow's race, the WeatherTech Championship race could be even more wild. All right, so qualifying wrapped up just a short while ago, so let's start things off talking about that in the GTP class. The number 60 Meyershank Racing Acura has been lightning quick all weekend long. They kept that going in qualifying as the number 60 Meyershank Racing Acura, driven by Tom Blomqvist, took the pole with a time of a 1 minute 14.569. That is Acura's fourth pole in a row. He beat out the 31 Action Express Racing Cadillac of Jack Aitken by 0.04 of a second, and Louis Delatraz in the number 40 Wayne Taylor Racing Cadillac will roll off third, putting in a time that's just under 0.2 off of pole.
Editor Stu here, and after post-qualifying inspection, it was found that the number 60 Meyershank Racing Acura failed to comply with the bodywork tolerances as defined in the LMDH technical regulations, so they failed post-race tech and they will be moved to the back of the GTP class for the start of the battle on the bricks. This promotes the number 31 Action Express Racing Cadillac to pole. Now, regardless of this penalty, I still do expect Acura to be very quick and among the favorites tomorrow, but this certainly is a setback for Acura as they look to, again, try and claw their way back into the championship fight.
Now, Acura is having an absolutely perfect weekend so far. The 60 has actually been top of the board in both of the practice sessions as well as today's qualifying. And the 93 has been quick too. They were second in the first practice and third in the second practice. So, you know what? They have pace as well. Both of the Acuras look to be the front runners come race day on Sunday. Now, in the lead up to this race, I did talk about BMW and how they needed to have a great weekend in order to claw their way into the championship fight. Well, Acura's kind of in the same boat. Heading into this weekend, they were 211 points back, the 93 being 211 points back. So they're really looking like they need to pull off a win this weekend if they want to claw their way into that championship fight. So far, like I said, Acura's looking pretty darn good this weekend, and the number 93, who's their best horse in that fight, is going to be rolling off the grid in 6th on Sunday. Next, I want to talk about Aston Martin, and the best way that I think I could describe Aston Martin's weekend so far in the Valkyrie is they're just kind of doing Aston Martin things. No, they don't have the quickest one-lap pace. They haven't been the quickest in practice, but they've been steady. And we know that with every track that they're coming to in this first season of the Valkyrie program that they're learning a lot. And I fully expect that this is going to be one of the sort of standard Aston Martin weekends that we've come to expect. You know, they're going to be solid in the race. They're not going to blow anybody's doors off with the pace that they have, but they're going to be steady. And I expect them to, get one of those, solid lead lap finishes that we've seen so many times from them this year as they just continue to learn on this season. They're actually quicker than some of the factory Porsches as well, and in some of the practice sessions as the Corvette hot laps go around. I think this happened to me in Detroit as well. But we'll talk about the Porsche pace in just a minute. Now, I said BMW needed a good race, and this is a track where they've had good races the past 2 years. They finished 1-2 last year. They were on the podium the year before that. So we're all expecting that BMW is going to be good here at Indy. So far, I would say that we've kind of done what we expect of them. I maybe would have expected them to be looking a little bit stronger, maybe challenging Acura for pole and putting up a little bit more pace than we've seen out of them this weekend, but they haven't been bad either. They're hovering with kind of like top 5-ish pace, it looks like. And, given how things could turn out on race day here with that weather, we saw them really do well in the mixed conditions last year. So there's absolutely no way that you can rule out BMW at this point, coming off that 1-2 at Road America as well. And like I said, they need a really good run to jump into the championship fight. BMW they're looking fine. I'm not too worried about them this weekend. Somebody who has looked better than I expected, honestly, this weekend has been Cadillac. I would even go as far to say as they're the closest challenger to Acura this weekend. We know that they've had a really challenging year this year. They still are looking for that first win of the season. They've started to show more pace as of late, but a win here at Indy would They're not necessarily going to jump into the championship mix with a win here, but I think it would do a lot for their momentum to round out the season and be able to build off of some of that momentum heading into next year. They've looked strong in all of the practices so far, and in qualifying, they carried that through as well. They'll roll off second, third, and fourth for Sunday's race, and honestly, we very well could be talking about Cadillac being in the picture for a race win here, so keep an eye on those V-Series Rs as the race goes along. Porsche. What do we have to say about Porsche at this point? Well, they're having a rough weekend. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And you could probably look at the BOP tables that were rolled out prior and say, oh yeah, we could have saw this coming. But their pace or lack thereof has still surprised me a little bit. We know the Porsche and the 963 have been strong here in previous years, and they just haven't had the pace this weekend. They were able to salvage a solid qualifying effort for at least one of the cars, with the number 6 pulling off a 5th place run, but it's definitely not what we were used to seeing out of them at the beginning of the season. Now, that brings me to the big X factor this weekend, and that's going to be weather. Porsche are probably doing a pretty big rain dance right now. Race day, it does look like we're going to see some mixed conditions, spots of rain in the afternoon, potentially a little bit heavier at times, could really throw this race into a frenzy, and that's exactly what Porsche needs here. A race where they can lean back on some of the experience, the tremendous experience that they have, not only here, but with the 963 around the world, and be able to use some of that experience to their advantage to be able to pull off a better result this weekend. Speaking of better results, Lamborghini is one that's looking for a better result here this weekend. They look like they have the pace to easily top their best finish in IMSA of 7th. But I think they could probably go even higher than that. And, I've been talking to a number of people this weekend, and it's all kind of been the same thing. Everybody was kind of expecting Lamborghini to take a big step forward this weekend. We've seen them improving their pace over the course of the season. You think back to Watkins Glen, they led laps on merit. They had the speed to lead that race for darn close to an hour. So Lamborghini being quick here isn't a huge surprise. Add in that they're bringing these Evo Joker upgrades that have really improved the rear suspension on that car. And, it may not help with tire deg a lot at a flat track like Indy, but it could help a lot next round out at Road Atlanta. So Lamborghini have taken a big step forward, and they have the pace this weekend, it looks like, to contend for a top 5, if not better. Now, they weren't able to get in a great qualifying effort, but this is a 6-hour race. A 6-hour race that could see some chaotic weather mixed in. We know that the Lamborghini, how it looked in the rain here last year. So Lamborghini, even though they don't have the one-lap qualifying pace, they were strong in practice. So we could be looking at the SC63 being a real player this weekend, and that's an exciting thing to think about. So Lamborghini and the SC63, you got to keep an eye on them when it comes over to race day, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be cheering them on. Moving on from the GTP class and taking a look at LMP2 here, it was Nick Boole who put down a flyer in a shortened LMP2 qualifying session to put that number 2 United Autosport car on pole. He beat out the sister number 22 United entry of Dan Goldberg by just under 0.4 of a second, and PJ Hyatt's Spike will roll off the grid in 3rd. Now, LMP2, as usual, is going to be a toss-up of a race to try and predict. We've seen lots of pace out of different cars this weekend. The number 11 TDS Racing entry has been quick. The 88 was also quick in practice. They swapped first and second in the practices. But then you also look at some really experienced teams. Now, last year's LMP2 champions, Inter Europol, and the 52 PR1 Matheson entries, they both put in top 5 efforts in both of the practice sessions as well. Again, they didn't have the best qualifying efforts, but that's one lap pace. I think that LMP2, as always, is going to be a complete toss-up tomorrow, and it should feature some really fun racing to watch that gets decided in the final hour of the race. In GTD Pro is the number 48 Paul Miller Racing BMW, driven by Dan Harper, that took the pole. He beat out the 65 Ford Multimatic Mustang of Chris Meese by just under 0.2 of a second. And then rolling off 3rd will be the 75 Express Racing Mercedes.
Editor Stu here again, and the 75 GTD Pro entry, the 75 Express Mercedes, has been moved to the back of the GTD Pro class for tomorrow's race start, as during post-qualifying tech, the car was found to have a ground clearance less than the minimum allowed in GTD Pro. So the 75 moves to the back of the GTD Pro class.
A surprising development here in the GTD Pro class, the 81 Dragon Speed, who is fastest in both of the practice sessions so far this weekend, they actually will roll off 7th tomorrow. So you'll remember they're trying to track down the number 3 Corvette in the championship fight. And as I've said a few times in this video, it's a 6-hour race. So take it with a grain of salt. It is just a bit of qualifying pace. Expect the 81 to make their way to the front. As we'll talk about in a second, we've seen quick Ferraris this weekend, and I think the 81 can bounce back from this. They do look like they're going to be a contender this weekend in a hyper-competitive GTD Pro class. I also mentioned the number 3 Corvette. They are going to be rolling off in 4th place, so that does mean that the points gap between them and the 81 increases a little bit to, I think, 56 points, but nonetheless, we're in for a great GTD Pro fight here. Now, I said the GTD Pro was tight. Well, GTD is also super tight. And when you look at the timing chart from qualifying, the top 19 GTD and GTD Pro cars were separated by less than a second. 19 cars within a second. That's just insane. And it's probably going to lend itself to quite a bit of traffic in the GTD classes tomorrow, especially if we get a bit of a longer run where things get a little bit mixed up out on track. So that might be worth keeping an eye on. But in this qualifying session, it was Casper Stevenson, the number 27 Heart of Racing Aston Martin, who took the pole position for the GTD class. The Aston Martin Vantage has looked really good all weekend long. They paced both of the practice sessions. They also took this qualifying pole, and they roll off 1st and 7th in GTD qualifying. An interesting stat here as well, Heart of Racing have won the last 3 races that they've started on pole for, so they could be a darn good pick to take this GTD race here tomorrow. The 21 AF Corsa Ferrari qualified 2nd, driven by Lila Wadu, and the number 80 Lone Star Racing Mercedes will roll off 3rd. Now, I talked about GTD Pro and how tight that race is going to be. Things are extremely tight here in GTD. I was talking with some of the drivers yesterday after the first practice session, which you'll hear from here in just a second, but it was like the top 16 drivers were separated by 0.7 of a second or something, and that was just in the GTD Pro class. So it is incredibly close here in GTD and GTD Pro. These are going to be some awesome races to see unfold on Sunday. Now, as I just said, I was able to catch up with some of the drivers after the first practice session yesterday. I got their thoughts on what it's like to race here at Indy, the championship fights that many of them are involved in, and of course, what some chaotic weather might mean here come Sunday. Here's what they had to say.
Yeah, it's good for us, obviously. For us at Wayne Taylor Racing, it's our first year here with the Cadillac, first time here with the Cadillac, so coming in with a lot of question marks, obviously looking at the Ganassi setup from last year, Action Express, and kind of picking those apart of what we like and what we don't like, and taking that to the simulator, understanding the differences between those two, and kind of making our own setup out of that. So rolling off the truck, a lot of question marks of what we're going to have, but I think we feel pretty good now with what it is, and all 4 drivers were relatively happy. We're in the mix of the top 5 all sessions, so feeling good so far, but track conditions are going to change. Obviously, it was pretty hot today, but race day looks like cooler and could rain, but also looking at last year, we had mixed conditions, and Ganassi especially was fast in all the different conditions, so I think the car, suits the track pretty well, and yeah, thankfully we rolled off the truck in a good spot. Today's hot. Tomorrow, practice 2 is going to be really cold, track temp especially, so almost useless information for qualifying. So we tried to get a lot of work done today, knowing that it's going to be the closest kind of representation for qualifying and probably the race. So yeah, the race could be a whole different animal, obviously with weather coming in and having no real practice in the wet conditions to kind of understand the strengths and weaknesses of the car, and if you want to make a car that's a little bit maybe stronger in the wet versus dry or vice versa. So those are things that thankfully I just give my feedback and my opinion, and the engineers have to make those tough decisions. And these days there's a lot of science and stuff behind those decisions of, tire temps, correlations, stiffness of the car, and how it interacts with tires. So yeah, a lot of question marks. Thankfully, we have a lot of smart people behind the scenes to make those decisions, and yeah, that's what makes this sport a big team effort.
Yeah, it was sad to miss out on Road America because that meant the end of our championship, basically of our championship defense. But yeah, I'm glad to be back. I did 2 races already since then in Europe, and I feel like it never happened. Yeah, obviously it's a very short track, only 80 seconds, so it's always tight. It's a difficult track to read in FP because you have so much traffic that you need to take the fastest laps with yeah, you cannot be sure of the pace of the others, but we look really competitive. It was our first time last year. We think we know where we could improve, and I think we did good steps today. So confident. Yeah, it's a challenge because especially the LMP2 car is very sensitive to the elements, especially temperature and track temperature. So the engineer needs to stay on top of that that we stay with a good balance. Also, if the temperature drops, so we need to anticipate it with the setup. That's more an engineer thing. I think this morning the car balance was pretty good, but obviously if the weather changes, we need to stay good.
It's gonna be a difficult weekend because, as you said, it's super close. Even the GT Pro, GTD, we are so close to each other. So every little detail will make the difference at the end of the weekend. And qualifying will be tough. Will be also. Luckily, we have separate categories now. But yeah, the level of the championship and the BOP are very equal. So this make it more exciting and more nice for the fans, especially harder for the drivers. But yeah, so far for us has been really good. So I just want and I hope to keep it like that. I was also surprised because at the beginning of the year I was, new team entry, first time on GT for Dragon Speed. We are a private team against the big ones. And I was like, okay, let's race, let's try to show the speed. And I will be also racing with factory drivers, which is good for me to see if in the future I can get a place. But that is very difficult. But at the end, step by step, the key of the year, the key of my team has been all the learn from the mistake we did during the year, no? You say we are the number one chaser. We try, but don't forget that we are a private team against Corvette, the biggest manufacturer here, against Porsche, that they are a factory team with a big manufacturer behind. And we are a private team. We are a small team, but we are doing an amazing job. So I'm super proud of these guys, and I'm trying to give them what they deserve, the maximum, and the maximum will be to win.
Indy has been by far the most emotional track of my career. I lost 3 championships in a row here in 2022 and 2023, all out of items from all because of things outside of our control. 2022, getting taken out by competitors who were not competing for the championship or even in class in both GT America and GT4 America with SRO. GT World Challenge, we lost the Pro-Am Championship because of a fueling issue and tire puncture, just completely random. So this place brought me a lot of pain before it brought me a lot of pleasure. But I'm really happy that I got to change my relationship with the track into one of despair, into one of happiness and good times. Because it's such a historic place, and I really love driving this track. It races absolutely great. I like to call it a racer's playground because there's not a lot of aero corners, so there's not a lot of aero wash, which makes the racing really tight and really close, which is always super fun. And it's just such an incredible track. Well, the biggest challenges from a team perspective in terms of rain is how much rain is there going to be? Are we going to have part rain, part dry? Is it going to be all wet? Is it going to be all dry? Because setting the car up to be the fastest it can be in the rain is a totally different thing than setting it up to be fastest it can be in the dry. It washes away a lot of the rubber that gets laid down on track from all the dry running and the practice sessions. It seems like it'll be dry up until the race. But personally, and I think everyone at Wright Motorsports would agree, we want it to rain. There have been races this year where we did not have good performance relative to the other manufacturers in the dry, and as soon as it started pouring, we started just skyrocketing through the field, and there's no other car than a 911 that I'd rather be in the rain. So we're doing a little rain dance over here.
Yeah, obviously the Lamborghini itself has a strong history on this track. The track basically suits the car quite a bit. So plus the data now from the past previous years, we ultimately learn from it everything and try to improve. for us drivers, or particularly me, I never driven with Lamborghini here, so I still have to learn a few things. But I think I'll figure it out quick, and we go from there. But definitely high chances. The team had especially always good results here in the past, and also in the next round, in the final round in Petit Le Mans. So yeah, really looking forward to it. I mean, there's a lot of power behind. The crew is great. The whole team itself, everybody's pushing themselves to the limits to do the best what they can, and ultimately we showed a lot of times throughout the season that we are strong. We had another 2 potential podiums, I would say, more sport in VR, and yeah, it was just unlucky circumstances, let's call it that way. But we showed we are there, and I think we showed a right trend, especially after the last half of the season, that is going the right direction with everybody from us, and the team is like pushing 100% to finally be in the middle of the podium and celebrate together. If there are some sprinkles and some rain on Sunday, then I would take it, because it sometimes makes some of a difference. But I mean, obviously, there's also a lot of luck to it as well. But I like those difficult circumstances and conditions on track. And yeah, I mean, last year we had a similar situation, I would say, and I think that's quite cool, and you can make a bit of a difference as a driver too.
Yeah, the year's flown by, unfortunately. Felt like I was at Daytona and Sebring not long ago, but that's life. But it's gone pretty well, and we're in a good spot. Could have been maybe a better spot, but everyone probably thinks that. And yeah, if we can finish the year strongly, and wherever we'll end up with that, we'll be happy with. Hopefully that's high. Yeah, it was very close, but we were definitely in the mix. I think we were 1.5 tenths off the P1 time, and we weren't going for a super quick lap. So yeah, I think they've got the BOP very tight this weekend, which is good, and it should make for a nice race.
That's it. The only thing left on the schedule for the weekend is the 6-hour-long TireRack.com battle on the bricks, and I'll be back tomorrow evening with a video recapping what we saw in that race. But in the meantime, I have a video previewing everything you need to know ahead of this weekend's race, and you can check it out right here. As always, a huge shout out to all of the channel supporters. If you too want to support the show, you can head to patreon.com/offtheyeses, become a YouTube channel member by clicking the button below. Once again though, thanks for tuning in. I hope everyone has a great race weekend and doesn't go off in the S's.